Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Nintendo 64 chat on Bog Panda. We've been talking about it a lot. There's probably still some more to come, but you guys love hearing us talk about anything, and you guys love Nintendo 64. Be honest with yourselves. You can find me at Official Pagan on everything social media wise. I'm not going to name them because somebody keeps changing the names and everything anyway. But before I hand this over to my co host here, I do have to say for the drink cucks out there, because I forgot to mention at the last episode we recorded, pumpkin beer. And joining me, as always,
Hi, everybody. I'm Kelly at KELLYTHUL on social media. And welcome to Bog Panda. We sure hope you consider subscribing, maybe liking a few videos, share them with your friends. As you do that, be sure and head on by the playlist that's called Hard No. Hard No is the world's shortest podcast. New episode every day. Only 1 minute of your day will be taken up with Hard No. Less than 1 minute will be taken up with a Hard No. So how can you beat that? One way you could beat it is to get some awesome merchandise, and you can do that on our merch store. We're continuing to add some new shirts. We've involved a third partner in this. His name's AI, and he's helping us out with a few things here and there. But we've got a few shirts out there you may want to check out, especially the Panda Army one. I think that's worth a look, and sure hope you give that some consideration. But
I'm going to be getting that myself for my Disney trip.
Yeah, I think that would be good. We had a couple options for our Panda Army one, and the current one's got a little authoritarian mojo going. Maybe a little more than we really wanted, but we liked it. So that's
I like it.
That's we're sticking with that. But mostly we talk about, when we're not talking about Doom and Alice Cooper, we're talking about Nintendo 64 these days, so, or Atari. We have a little Atari too, but
yeah, Atari, Doom, and Alice Cooper are really, that's the sweet spot. If that stuff sounds good to you, you're gonna have a good time here.
Yep.
But tonight we're talking about Nintendo 64, and look, I have a theremin behind me because it's so bright in this room. You can see everything.
Yeah, it's the power of light.
it's weird. It's weird. I don't like it. There's new lighting in my studio. That's why it's so bright in here.
And by new, he means some.
There's some. So there was always puck lights. I just normally keep them turned off. But I have new, much larger and brighter ones. So I wanted to show that off for Kelly for a couple of episodes, since he complains that it's dark in here.
I'm not the only one that complains. Check our comments out.
Yeah, I think it's just you. So today, I recently became an owner, or married to an owner, of a Nintendo 64. There's a Nintendo 64 in my house. Kelly, longtime Nintendo 64 fan. Were you a day one adopter on that? You had it while it was still a going
first Christmas season adopter.
Okay.
So that'd been pretty early, because they usually do a pretty good job of making those available before the big holidays. So the first Nintendo 64 Christmas, there was a Nintendo 64 that made its way into the household.
Very nice. Very nice. Do you remember what your first game was for it?
I think it's Mario Kart.
Okay.
I think so. The South Park in Nintendo 64 is one of my treasured ones that we have there. And then, of course, we've talked on the recent show, Mace now is another one I didn't even know I had, really. It's pretty cool. But
well, you sent me a photo of your collection. You have a good sized collection.
Not too bad. And it came from all over the place. But I'm gonna check out DK Oldies a little bit more, and because I never had GoldenEye. I need to get GoldenEye. Played emulated versions of it. It's pretty awesome. So I'd like to get the actual cartridge. And then I don't know what happened to it, but I used to have NFL Blitz, and that is a ridiculously fun game. And I still have the manual for it. And so I was getting everything organized. I said, "Oh, there's the NFL Blitz manual. Awesome. Now, where's that cartridge at?" Not showed up anywhere yet. So I'm not sure what happened to the NFL Blitz.
Is that one still reasonably priced? It seemed like the sports games were pretty
Yeah, I think so, and I
Affordable.
think that's a value buy if you pick up NFL Blitz. And when you've talked about like basketball and a few things you like to play, Blitz is in that vein of unnecessarily violent football. So
Nice.
I think you'll enjoy it.
I've never been a huge football game guy other than Tecmo Bowl for the original NES. I do remember some fun games of that.
I mean, this has I mean, it's obviously carrying major NFL branding, given the NFL Blitz, but so you don't get quite as many robots, but you get some pretty fun bonus activities after plays and all that kind of stuff. So it's worth taking a look at.
Nice. Well, soon you're going to have another option to play that on rather than just your existing Nintendo 64, the one that's in my house. As we mentioned on the episode where I talked about how I acquired mine as an anniversary present for my wife through DK Oldies, who we mentioned. Another thing that we had mentioned is there's going to be a newer option that you'll be able to play, and that's coming from Analog. It's going to be the Analog 3D. So it's going to be an aftermarket console. There's so many of those for the 16-bit consoles and even for a lot of the handhelds. You don't really see too much stuff like that for the Nintendo 64 so far. I assume part of that's the kind of strange architecture of it with the expandable memory and the controller mapping and all that kind of stuff. I assume that's a big part of it. There is some interesting claims on this site though. And at first, I do want to throw out there, I am familiar with Analog's products from various videos and reviews and things. Never played any of their stuff. You,
Yeah, and
sir?
I wasn't even familiar with it until you shared that stuff. But what an interesting wild world is analog.
It is reproduction consoles. They have Genesis, Super Nintendo, Game Boy is their big one. It's high end stuff though, and the price points match that. For the most part, most of the models of their Game Boy, for example, are coming in around $250. And if you look at currently at the time we're recording this, pretty much everything is sold out on their store at the moment, but everything is in the $200 to $300 range, it seems. And there's a couple of special edition consoles that are in the $400 to $500 range. So this is not cheap stuff. This is not going to be, like a $50 plug and play that you can play cartridges on that you would order off of Amazon. There's no price point that's been announced, but it's not, it's going to be steep. Now, I did share the site with Kelly. It does list some of the specs, and there's a few interesting things on there. It says that it is 100% compatible with all of the Nintendo 64 games from every region. Now, is that something that has any sort of interest for you, sir? Is there any kind of rare games or games from different regions you were interested in?
And we did a show and a while back where I believe it was a Canadian played every Nintendo game that was available in North America, and it was a pretty good number of games. I just can't recall what it was. Maybe it's on the screen right now. I'm not sure. So depends how much research I'm able to do after we record, but it might be there. But if not, there's a bunch. So I like, and we kind of resurrected my interest in the 64 with you picking one up and us kind of talking through some stuff. But I'm not particularly for what I'd likely have to lay down to get this to have that capability. It's not like I'm going like, oh, I can just get the Japanese release of Spyro. I'm going to be gold. And so the so probably not. I mean, if Apple made gaming consoles, that they would be these. It would be and they would be analog because it looks very Apple-y, surprised there's not an I in front of the name of all their stuff. It's all very clean, either very white or monochrome. Um, uh, Looks like just kind of super high end look. So the impressive that it can do across regions, but for me, not a big bell ringer. How about you?
So it depends. There's not a ton of information on this, even though a lot of people are talking about it. The announcement got a lot of attention. Um, there's not a ton of information. What's interesting to me, as we've talked about on this show before, there's a couple games that flat out require the expanded memory for the Nintendo 64. A couple games that unlock additional content that's behind a sort of paywall of you getting this for it. Games like Perfect Dark, and there's a couple other ones. And then there's a larger library of games that will allow you to switch into the high resolution mode. Nearly all of the games, I believe, play in the system's low resolution mode in order to fit everything onto the cartridge, for the compression to get everything onto the cartridge. So many games, I think it's like 50 or 60, the numbers that I've been seeing, will allow you to play high resolution versions of the games. And in the case of Perfect Dark, actually switch the screen resolution. So you can switch to a actual widescreen and letterboxed options and things like that. So that's pretty cool. I'm curious how that works because it says on there that there's no emulation, that it's all actual hardware. So does that mean you need to have an expansion pack, or will it come with an expansion pack? Or is that somehow emulated or built into the machinery? So that's not explained. So that would be my biggest question there. Again, there's only a couple games that require it. So it's not like it's going to be a huge damper on anything. But I am really curious, since there are a lot of games that will allow you to switch between high and low resolution, at the very least, using it, if not unlock some additional content.
Well, I mean, what you've seen kind of in the past, and you can go through all sorts of different systems, and the Nintendo 64 is a really good example of it, is you start to shoot for a price point. That price point creates certain ceilings on capabilities, and the Analog is unfettered by price point. You're like, we'll just charge a ton of money for it.
They're not concerned about your price points.
Yeah. It's not a price point oriented organization. So
they're like, you don't need to eat this month.
That's right. Save up, wussy. So it's yeah, so yeah, my guess is, and they hit it hard. This is zero emulation, and actually on most of their offerings, that's a big point they make on all of them, is that and there's no emulation going on here. It's all actual hardware. So I'm just assuming they say, yeah, we'll take care of your expansion pack needs.
You would think it, and again, we don't know what the price point of this is, but I'm guessing not affordable. That's right. the level it's going to be at.
Yeah, it will be more than a used Odyssey at Crazy Frank's.
Yeah. This is not something you'll see at Crazy Frank's anytime soon.
I don't think so. Now, I think you actually sign in the terms of use that you cannot sell any analog tools or any analog gaming to Crazy Frank. So
he's not allowed to buy it.
Nope.
So there is, without getting too far off onto a tangent, there is a company that makes ink colors that will not sell to one particular artist. And it says right on their website that he's not allowed to buy it. And if they find out that you have purchased it for him, you'll no longer be allowed to buy their colors either.
I don't know what the ink marketplace is like, whether it's a good idea to start to cut down your particular consumer base.
So it's because that artist, who they won't allow to use that ink, has an exclusive deal with a company that makes one particular shade of black, that he's the only artist allowed to use that. It can be used in industrial uses, but he's the only person allowed to use it to create anything that's not industrial with it. So a lot of people felt that was unfair. So this company, to combat that, he's not allowed to buy their colors.
You're just a fountain of interesting knowledge, sir.
Right. So I do anticipate this being a hefty price tag. So as you would imagine, it's HDMI rather than composite cables and component cables. So you don't need an adapter. I was able to get the adapter as part of the bundle pack that I got. I've had no issues with it, but of course, it doesn't upscale anything really. So you're still looking at Nintendo 64 graphics on a much larger screen
Mhm.
than you would have originally. This says though that it is upscaling to 4K. So that I think is kind of interesting, but the trade-off of that is I think a lot of people are going to read that and think it's enhancing the graphics in some way rather than just upscaling it so that you're not getting anything that's stretched or looks a little blurrier than it needs to. It's not going to look 4K. It's just going to look better than you playing through an adapter, slightly better.
Yeah, it will be interesting though for things like Mace, which is a pretty beautiful game, pretty rich texture. How because if it kind of knocks off some of the artifacts and some of the things you can get in and through an upscale process, that'll be interesting to see how some of the gameplay looks.
Yeah, I am definitely curious to see it. Especially the game I think I would try on it first would be Perfect Dark, just because when you
Yeah.
switch to high resolution mode for that, from not just the games that I have or games that I played, even watching videos of people's list of the best games, Perfect Dark seems head and shoulders above absolutely everything else as far as the graphical capabilities of it. So I'd be curious to see that. Now, going to the big question of whether or not you would purchase this. Now we talked about the 2600 plus, and you mentioned you already have an option for that. Does the high end features of this, the I'm sure what will be a very sleek look of it based on their other consoles, is that enough to entice you to purchase this?
Um, Probably not. It although their Super Nintendo, but everything's sold out, but their Super Nintendo offering looked pretty interesting to me because it was one ridiculously small and wireless controllers to it. So I thought that was pretty. I did not get a read on this one that these are going to be wireless. In fact, I think it said it emulated the traditional four port Nintendo 64 thing. Um, so I just because I'm anticipating that this thing's rolling in, at a minimum $300, and I think I'm very low there on what this is going to be.
You think that's an
Uh,
optimistic?
I think more like five could be a pretty realistic, and that's just going to be a non-starter for me at that point in time because I'm almost 2/3 of the way to At Games Pinball at that point for Nintendo 64 games, which I enjoy, but I have a way to play them today. So I'm kind of going back to my Atari 2600 plus defense and saying, got it covered. I think I'm going to sit tight on this one. How about you?
Mostly with you. It's covered, gonna kind of sit tight. Now, the price point's gonna make a huge difference there. If we're talking $400 to $500, it's a non-starter for me, absolutely. If it's more in the $300 range, maybe. If only because then the other one can kind of stay upstairs in the living room for family stuff, and then I could put this in the game room.
Yeah.
So if only for that.
Yeah. I think, our opinion could probably change if we get a preview copy to
Yeah,
look
I
at.
think that, I mean, the only way we could really make up our
Yeah.
minds
That'd be, that
if we
would do
would
it.
have purchased it would be to get a free.
And, and then maybe dole out one of those rare panda bumps to, to it. Not apparently they have a little bit of difficulty selling their product since everything's sold out. Uh, so maybe that's not an overly enticing offer to our friends at Analog, but yeah, always worth at least mentioning that we're open to
Absolutely.
it. So
We are willing to take one off your
yeah,
hands.
happy happy to help however we can for free. you know,
We'll
Free
jump
to
on
us.
that sword for you. We're your testers. But yeah, I price point is going to become a big deal. Like I could see, like I'm sure this would look great in my game room.
Oh yeah, I think it would be fantastic. You could set it on the counter of the old timey photo booth, and you can people can play back behind there dressed as a cowboy or the Undertaker.
And also because we never got a Nintendo 64 Mini, that would be cool as well. I know that there was rumors of it and some patents that were filed by Nintendo, but it just never came out. And I think that probably falls into the same category as why we're likely not getting a Dreamcast or Saturn Mini, as Sega explained. You're getting into higher end hardware, which would require more money to be put into it and pricing yourself out of the mini market at that point.
Yeah, although you'd think they might be able to pull it off for the six. Although there's a pretty rich history of Nintendo 64 emulation doesn't usually end well.
Yeah.
For most things. So maybe maybe that's well, it's obviously not in the offing right now, which is a shame because that would absolutely be a mini console I'd pick up. But we're going to include a link to Analogue in our show notes here, so you can go check out. It's a really cool site. You can read all the sold outs, take a look at what you can't
You
buy.
can see all the stuff you can't buy.
Yeah. So but then they probably wouldn't buy because it's too expensive. But who knows? But it looks like they just do a fantastic job. And regardless of our whining about price, it seems the market bears it just fine. So good for them.
Absolutely. Well, anything else to add on our most recent Nintendo 64 talk, sir?
Nope. Let's do some research so we can do another one. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Bog Panda.